on the continent is tarnished by the waves of violence against fellow Africans. The most recent attacks threatened diplomatic relations and led to an exodus of foreigners. This begs the question, are South Africans xenophobic? To discuss this, I'm joined in studio by international relations consultant Charles Sinkala and African Diaspora Union chairperson Bathini Zaza Gebashe joins us from our Durban studios. Good afternoon to the both of you and thank you for joining me. So let's start here in studio. Charles, the question is always posed. Are South Africans xenophobic? Because, you know, whenever we have these incidents that happen, you then go into that debate. You hear people saying South Africans are not xenophobic, while others are saying, well, there's a deep-seated hatred and resentment for particularly nationals from other African countries. Your sense in the classical definition of xenophobia, is South Africa a xenophobic society?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much for having me. You know, I've been here for the past 25 years and, you know, my experience has been a different perspective. But one will understand that there is this confusion which has been mushrooming over the past couple of years of foreign nationalities being attacked. But the direct question one will ask is the same what you've asked, but the answer will be South Africans are not xenophobic. And this has been actually created by the handlers who benefit from this situation, whom I call the criminals, who control the exchange between the businesses South Africa does with the international world. You know, in South Africa, it is business as usual. Everybody participates and have a share. And you've seen how South Africa has actually tried to develop in the past couple of years, though it has its own tantrums and problems. But one will understand that the actual effect, you know, one must ask is not what it is, but why is South Africa being branded like it is xenophobic? All these attacks which you've seen of foreign nationals has been happening in a very low cost, maybe even CBD or communities where these foreigners are residing, or the small businesses by foreign nationals. That's where things are happening. But if you talk of central business hubs like here in Sandton, you know, you don't see those type of things. You know, and one will understand also that a certain sectors of society who benefit onto this inhuman treatment, they would like to use somebody as a pawn. I've given an example on a chessboard time and again that a chessboard was created by an African, but taken over that it was created by a European person. A chessboard has got pawns in front and there's a king at the back who are protected. And always you play the pawns to get to the other king and whatever. So the advantage and people being used as pawn and state enterprise also being condemned that the government has failed to handle them, and you find something that they need to privatize. But if they have condemned it for the South African government not to run it, but how would an investor or somebody from the outside will run it profitably?
Right. Charles, I will be keen to hear a bit more about those who you say are benefiting from this, from some of this chaos that we see. But let me bring in Bathini from our Durban studios. And Bathini, how important is it that we understand what it is that we are dealing with, even as we, you know, respond to the outbreaks that we see from time to time?
Thank you very much, for this opportunity. I would also just like to put in on the first question that you asked Dr. Sinkala there. South Africans are not xenophobic. And I do concur with Dr. Sinkala when you say that is a system that it's a system that is forced, that is meant to benefit a certain few. Certain individuals that are benefiting from these xenophobic attacks. But we also should not pardon other factors that contribute to the anger and the frustration of the people that are in the grassroots areas where most of these xenophobic attacks happen. We need to look at issues that make people angry and maybe envious to the African person. I'll take, for instance, most African people that come to South Africa do not take jobs, but they initiate businesses. They have skills that they taught from back where they come from, which we do not have. I remember when I was a child, We used to do craft work at school. I think those were things that were preparing one for the future, to say if you don't get employment, then you are able to take care of yourself and make a living. Now, African brothers come here and they have such training. They come into a place of people, a society that has been taught to be a dependent society. And that society then gets frustrated from this person that comes into our area and then suddenly succeeds, while we as South African nationals are not having what they then have because they start their own businesses.
So throw into the mix there for me then, Batini, if I stick with you for a moment, the whole question around issues to do with migration, South Africa's management of its migration situation within this context of then relations between South Africans and nationals from other African countries.
If I were to be a president for a day, I'll first control our borders. We have the most porous borders. Working with the diaspora, I've actually learned that millions of migrants that are here are without documents. They cross the borders nilly-willy, anyhow. And that's what I would do to first cut off our borders. Now, coming back to your question, understand when there are frustrations between the locals, the host, and the visitor, I would put it like that. Now, this person comes into your home, you welcome them initially very well. You've got a pot of food that is ready to cater for 10 people in the house. And, but yet that household has 24 people. And then you host these other people as well to eat in that one same pot. But they are able to find their own way out of this. And yet you are still stuck and stranded into this trying to make do with what you have. A system that doesn't work, a system that needs to be revisited, policies that are not even implemented, if, however, they're there. South Africans are suffering from those. I think government needs to chip in and correct our policies, first of all. Correct the whole system to ensure that South Africans are upgraded to a level that other African countries, I'm talking about skills, not economic or any other thing, to the skills level that other people from other countries are in.
Charles, if you can just weigh in then, how important then is the language that is used in talking about some of these issues? We are talking now about the issue around regulating migration, but also you've seen a lot being said about the language being used by various sectors of society in talking about fighting lawlessness, which is a legitimate thing on its own, but in this particular mix, it can serve either a good purpose or a bad purpose. How do you manage that, talking about fighting lawlessness, issues of regulating migration, but at the same time not cross over the line of encouraging and fanning xenophobia?
Of course, one thing we must understand in the world, that migration is real. We're never going to run away from it. Even if how many borders we're going to build or walls around ourselves, we'll have those influx of people coming from certain aspects of the world and countries in search of either green opportunities or investment into those nations. But one must understand that the law as well, like what you've put it, that we have put in systems and policies that will make sure that we manage this influx of people coming into the country. This xenophobic alone has been targeted on Africans. The other people like Russians and Americans, all of this, it does not suit them.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is South Africa must take actually advantage of the scarcity of skills in South Africa. For instance, medical doctors at Baragwanath hospitals, they are always short of medical staff, and in all other facilities. Can they legalize some of these foreign nationals who are sitting without doing anything? You must remember that if somebody hasn't got a fingerprint taken by the government and has got no proper credentials, those are prone to criminal activities. And where somebody is caught with criminal activities, those must be dealt out with and must set an example.
Right.
So that's how the way and the government has to issue and capitalize, dig down and harvest from what is happening.
Charles Sinkala, thank you so much for coming through completely out of time. And also from our Durban studios, Batini Zaza Gebashe joining us there in that particular conversation.